The story of bikers trying to attack an elderly black man only to discover that his loyal companion was a retired police dog is a powerful reminder of how appearances can be deceiving and how justice often comes in unexpected ways. At first glance, the elderly man may have appeared vulnerable, someone who could be easily intimidated or harmed by the aggressive group. This perception was based on their arrogance and prejudice, believing that age and race made him an easy target. What they did not realize was that he was not alone, and the very dog walking by his side carried years of training, discipline, and instinct to protect its owner at any cost. The bikers saw only an old man and a pet, but what they encountered was bravery, loyalty, and justice personified in a four-legged guardian. This speech reflects on themes of respect, prejudice, and hidden strength. The bikers acted out of hate and intimidation, not realizing that their actions would be met with consequences they could not control. The retired police dog, though perhaps older in years, was still sharp, alert, and ready to defend. The moment they made their move, the situation flipped instantly. Instead of the elderly man being the victim, the bikers were confronted with a force that symbolized law, order, and protection. A dog trained to serve and protect doesn't forget its duty, even in retirement. And in this story, the animal became a living example of resilience and loyalty. The deeper message lies in the lesson that strength is not always visible on the surface. Society often underestimates the elderly, seeing them as weak or fragile, when in truth they carry decades of wisdom, courage, and resilience. Similarly, the bikers underestimated the dog, thinking it was just an ordinary pet. What they failed to realize is that real power often comes quietly, without boasting, until the moment it's needed. This parallels life. We must never judge or underestimate others based on what we see, because everyone carries untold experiences, hidden abilities, and inner strength that can surprise us. The role of the dog in this story is also symbolic. A retired police dog represents loyalty and sacrifice. It is an animal that has already given years of service to protecting people, enforcing justice, and fighting crime. Even though it may no longer be active in the force, its instinct remains the same, to stand between danger and its loved ones. The bond between the elderly man and his dog shows us that loyalty transcends words. While the bikers operated from hate and cruelty, the dog operated from love and protection. This contrast highlights the purity of loyalty and the destructive power of prejudice. The transformation of the bikers' attitudes in the aftermath is also telling. At first, they were full of arrogance, laughing at the thought of intimidating an old man. But once the dog revealed its true nature, their laughter turned into fear and regret. This shift teaches that cruelty often comes from ignorance, and ignorance often meets its end when confronted with truth and strength. The bikers left the encounter not only physically stopped, but emotionally shaken, realizing that their actions had consequences and that prejudice blinds people to the reality of others' worth. Ultimately, this story inspires us to rethink how we see others and reminds us that strength comes in many forms. It can be in an elderly man who carries dignity despite being targeted by hate, or in a retired police dog who refuses to forget its duty to protect. It teaches that justice doesn't always wear a uniform, and that protectors can come in unexpected shapes and forms. Above all, it shows that loyalty and love are stronger than hate and arrogance, and those who judge or attack based on prejudice will always end up learning a lesson they will never forget. Many times in life, people are judged by how they look rather than who they truly are, and this is one of the most dangerous mistakes anyone can make. When the bikers in this story targeted the elderly black man, they saw only what their eyes wanted them to see: an older man with gray hair moving slower than them, wearing simple clothes without any intimidating presence. Appeared weak to them. They thought he was easy prey. Someone who could not defend himself, and someone who would never pose a challenge. This surface-level judgment was not only wrong, but it became the reason for their downfall, because they ignored the truth that appearances never tell the full story. The elderly man had lived through many years of life, an experience, and within him there was wisdom, resilience, and hidden strength that no one could measure by simply looking at him. He was not a man who went around boasting about what he had or who he was. Instead, he carried himself with quiet dignity and humility. The bikers assumed that silence and humility meant weakness, but in reality it was a sign of inner strength. He did not need to prove his power through loud words or aggressive actions. He had something far more powerful standing beside him. His retired police dog, the dog itself, was another example of how appearances deceive. To anyone unfamiliar, it might have looked like just another pet walking calmly beside its owner, but within the dog was years of rigorous training, loyalty, courage, and instinct. A retired police dog is no ordinary animal. It has faced dangerous criminals, tracked missing people, protected officers, and learned to respond instantly to threats. That experience does not disappear with age or retirement. It remains part of the dog's very nature, waiting to be called upon at the right time. The bikers underestimated both the man and his companion because they believed their tattoos, leather jackets, and numbers gave them control, yet the true power in that moment belonged to the quiet bond between the elderly man and his trusted dog. Judging by appearances is one of the oldest mistakes humanity repeats. People forget that true strength is often hidden beneath the surface. An old man may carry decades of wisdom and endurance that no young aggressor could match. A calm dog may hold the instincts of a protector, ready to defend at any cost. In this case, the bikers only saw what they wanted to see: weakness, vulnerability, and fear. But when they tried to act on that judgment, they were met with a reality that shocked them. Instead of helplessness, they encountered loyalty and power. Instead of dominance, they faced justice delivered by a retired police dog that would stop at nothing to protect its owner. This story reflects a larger truth in life. Often society undervalues the elderly, assuming they have nothing left to give or cannot defend themselves, yet their strength comes not only from physical power, but from experience, patience, and connections built over a lifetime. The dog represents loyalty that cannot be bought or faked, a reminder that those who are underestimated often carry the deepest reserves of strength. The bikers thought they could intimidate and overpower, but they learned that life punishes arrogance and rewards dignity. In the end, the lesson is simple but powerful. Never judge by appearances. What looks fragile may hold unshakable strength. What seems quiet may roar when pushed to the edge, and what appears vulnerable may be the very force that teaches aggressors their greatest lesson. The bikers wanted to prey on weakness, but instead they discovered they had walked into the presence of loyalty, courage, and resilience, and it was their judgment that betrayed them, not the man they targeted. The retired police dog in this story is more than just a companion. It represents a symbol of loyalty, training, and hidden power that many people fail to recognize at first glance. When the bikers approached the elderly black man with the intent to harm, they underestimated the presence of the animal walking quietly by his side. To them, it was nothing more than a pet, perhaps old, perhaps harmless, but in reality it was a living force of discipline, courage, and unmatched instinct forged through years of serving in law enforcement. That is what makes this story so powerful. The dog embodies a lesson about how true guardianship can remain unseen until it is needed. Police dogs are trained in ways that make them extraordinary compared to normal household pets. They learn to detect danger before it becomes visible to others. They are conditioned to respond without hesitation. When their partner is threatened, they carry within them the ability to protect, restrain, and fight if necessary. And when such dogs retire, they do not lose their training, their instincts, or their loyalty. Instead, they channel all of that experience into serving and protecting the one person who means the most to them, their owner. For this elderly man, the dog was more than just protection. It was a lifelong guardian that would never allow harm to come to him. What makes this point even stronger is the bond between the man and his dog. Years spent together create a connection that cannot be broken. The dog knows its owners, movements, moods, and even unspoken signals. That kind of connection is invisible to outsiders, but it can mean the difference between danger and safety. When a threat arises, the bikers saw only an animal sitting quietly. They had no idea that behind those calm eyes was a force ready to act at the slightest hint of aggression. As soon as they tried to cross the line, the dog's instincts would have kicked in with precision and determination, not out of anger, but out of love and duty. Another layer to this is the symbolism of loyalty. A retired police dog represents unwavering devotion. The bikers may have had numbers, strength, and intimidation on their side, but none of that can match loyalty that is willing to fight until the end for someone else. It is this kind of loyalty that makes the dog not just a protector, but a living shield. A reminder that true strength does not always come in loud or aggressive forms. Sometimes it comes in the quiet devotion of a companion who will never abandon you even when the world turns against you. This point also highlights how people often fail to understand the value of silent power. The bikers thought their loud engines, leather jackets, and aggressive behavior made them the dominant force in the situation. Yet the dog showed that true power can be silent, disciplined, and strategic. It does not announce itself until the right moment. But when it does, it is unstoppable. That lesson is not only about the dog, but about life itself. Many times, those who appear quiet and humble hold within them the ability to rise and defend when pushed to the edge. Though, in the end, the retired police dog stands as a metaphor for hidden strength and unbreakable loyalty. It teaches us that protection often comes from the most unexpected places, and that love and devotion can create a force stronger than fear. The bikers assumed they could overpower a man and his animal, but they were met with a reality they never expected: a guardian disguised as a pet and a bond that no threat could destroy. This story reminds us to never overlook what looks ordinary, because within the ordinary can live the extraordinary, especially when loyalty and love are involved. When the bikers attempted to intimidate the elderly black man, they believed their dominance in numbers and aggression would automatically secure them control over the situation. This assumption reveals a deeper flaw in their perspective. They relied solely on outward appearances and underestimating others rather than recognizing the unseen strength people or animals may hold. The retired police dog's presence completely disrupted their expectations and turned the power dynamics upside down. The very moment they assumed they had the upper hand, they were instead facing a disciplined and fearless protector, shifted the balance in favor of the man they thought was weak. Power dynamics often work on perception. People tend to assume that loud, aggressive, or outwardly forceful behavior represents real power. But this story demonstrates that true strength lies in discipline, training, and loyalty. The bike mistook numbers for control. Yet the dog's singular presence outshined all of them combined, because it was not just about physicality, but about instinct and readiness to act. Unlike the bikers who were fueled by ego and cruelty, the dog was guided by purpose and commitment. The difference turned intimidation into irrelevance. Their so-called dominance was shattered the moment they realized they could not simply scare or overpower their target. Another layer to this shift in power comes from the idea of respect versus fear. The bikers tried to create fear through their actions, but fear, temporary and often collapses when confronted with courage. The dog, however, commanded respect, not because it barked or made a scene, but because its behavior and stance carried the weight of experience and authority. Anyone who has seen a trained police dog at work knows that their mere presence can silence chaos without needing to lash out. In this way, the retired dog forced the bikers into a position they never anticipated. They became the ones unsure, cautious, and suddenly aware of their vulnerability. The tables turned instantly without a single word spoken. This reversal also highlights prejudice and arrogance blind people to reality. The bikers saw only an elderly black man and assumed vulnerability. They saw only a dog and assumed harmlessness. They failed to recognize the layers of strength, courage, and experience hidden beneath those appearances. Prejudice narrows vision, making people believe their assumptions are facts. Yet, in reality, those assumptions collapse when tested against truth. The dog embodied that truth, showing that appearances can deceive, and that those underestimated often hold the greatest power. When the bikers faced resistance, they were not just surprised. They were unprepared, which left them powerless. The change in power dynamics also carries a symbolic message about justice. When those who try to dominate or oppress others are confronted by unexpected strength, the balance of justice begins to restore itself. The bikers had no moral ground. Their actions were rooted in intimidation and malice. The man and his dog, however, represented dignity, loyalty, and resilience. The confrontation became less about physical might and more about which side carried truth and righteousness. With the dog standing guard, it was clear that cruelty had no chance against loyalty and that arrogance could never outweigh purpose. Ultimately, the lesson from this point is that power does not always belong to the loudest, the strongest in numbers, or the ones who appear intimidating. It belongs to those who carry discipline, respect, and hidden reserves of strength. The retired police dog flipped the script because it represented controlled power, not reckless force. It shifted the bikers from attackers to hesitant observers, forced to reconsider their actions. True power lies not in how much fear you create, but in how much respect you command. And in this story, respect and loyalty dismantled arrogance and cruelty. Completely hidden strength is one of the most powerful forces in life because it exists quietly without the need for recognition or display. In the case of the elderly black man and his retired police dog, the bikers could not see the depth of strength standing before them. They assumed that because the man was old and alone, he was defenseless, and because the dog was no longer on active duty, it was nothing more than a pet. Yet the reality was entirely different. True strength lived within the bond between the man and his dog, a strength born out of years of discipline, loyalty, and lived experience. Strength like this is not obvious to the eye, but it reveals itself in moments of crisis. Hidden strength often teaches us that appearances are deceptive. Society tends to equate youth, muscles, wealth, or numbers with power, but those external displays are not always what determines the outcome of the situation. The elderly man carried with him a lifetime of endurance and resilience that had shaped his character. He may have seemed fragile to the bikers, but his calm presence and trust in his companion proved otherwise. The retired police dog represented another hidden strength. The bikers saw an ordinary animal, but what stood before them was a highly trained, disciplined, and fearless protector who had been through countless situations demanding courage and control. When hidden strength surfaces, it dismantles false assumptions and shatters illusions of superiority. This moment also demonstrates that hidden strength can create balance even when the odds appear uneven. The bikers likely felt untouchable in their group. With their loud engines and aggressive demeanor, they believed their intimidation would go unchallenged, but hidden strength thrives in silence until it is needed, and when it emerges, it can neutralize the largest threats without noise. The dog didn't need to bark wildly or lash out. Its controlled stance and readiness were enough to alter the energy of the entire encounter. The bikers went from aggressors to hesitant observers because the hidden strength they overlooked suddenly come to light. Another dimension of hidden strength lies in the emotional resilience of the man himself. To face intimidation with dignity rather than fear requires inner strength that many underestimate. A younger man might have shouted back or tried to fight, but the elderly man relied not on aggression but on quiet confidence in his companion. This calmness revealed strength of character built over years, perhaps decades of facing challenges. Hidden strength is not always physical. Sometimes it is patience, wisdom, and the ability to trust what you know rather than reacting to fear. The bikers were unprepared for this level of calm resistance, and it further unsettled their false sense of control. The story also shows that hidden strength often carries an element of justice. Those who act out of prejudice and cruelty rarely expect their targets to fight back, much less to have the resources to defend themselves. But when hidden strength emerges, it delivers justice in a way that arrogance cannot anticipate. The bikers thought they were choosing an easy target, yet instead they walked into a confrontation with a protector whose entire existence was based on service, courage, and justice. Ignorance of hidden strength became the very reason for their downfall. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. Hidden strength is not about showing off or seeking recognition. It is about being prepared and resilient when it matters most. The elderly man and his retired police dog did not need to announce their abilities. Their strength revealed itself naturally when tested. True strength does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers in silence until the right moment arrives. The bikers learned too late that the greatest power often lives in the places they least expected, and that the quiet resilience of those they underestimated was far greater than their false bravado. Justice has a way of surfacing even in the most unlikely of moments, and the story of the elderly black man with his retired police dog embodies that truth perfectly. The bikers believed they had found an easy victim, someone they could harass without consequence. Their prejudice and arrogance blinded them to reality. They thought they could use fear to dominate, but justice found a way to reveal itself through loyalty, courage, and hidden strength. The retired police dog represented more than just protection. It symbolized that wrongdoing cannot always go unchecked, and that the forces of justice often closer than one might expect. The concept of justice here is not about legal systems or courts, but about the natural balance of actions and consequences. Every act of cruelty carries with it an eventual reckoning, and the bikers met theirs unexpectedly. They rode into the situation believing their aggression would be enough to control the narrative, yet their hatred and mockery collapsed when confronted with an undeniable force of discipline and protection. The retired police dog had spent years defending communities from harm, and even in retirement, that sense of duty did not disappear. Justice was delivered not by punishment through violence, but by exposing the bikers' weakness and ignorance for what they truly were. There is also a deeper layer of justice in how arrogance often destroys itself. The bikers' overconfidence left them blind to danger. They were so certain of their power that they ignored the possibility that the man might not be defenseless. Their prejudice made them underestimate both him and his companion. In that underestimation, they created the conditions for their humiliation. When the dog revealed its training and readiness, the bikers' authority crumbled. They were not defeated by force, but by their own failure to see the truth. Justice in this sense was poetic. It turned their cruelty into a mirror that reflected back their own weakness. Justice also appears in the loyalty of the dog itself. After years of service, it would have been easy to assume the dog was done with its role, but true loyalty does not fade. The dog remained committed to protecting its owner, embodying the values of courage and duty. Long after leaving official service, that loyalty became the vessel for justice, ensuring that cruelty did not win the day. It highlights how justice is not always about punishment, but about protection, about defending the innocent and reminding the world that dignity and respect cannot be trampled without consequence. The elderly man's dignity also played a role in the justice delivered. He did not need to retaliate with aggression or sink to the bikers, so level his calmness and reliance on his trusted companion showed that justice can be achieved without losing composure. He stood tall in silence, allowing loyalty and discipline to speak for him, and in doing so revealed that justice sometimes comes through quiet strength rather than loud retaliation. His response contrasted sharply with the bikers' arrogance, making the lesson even clearer. Cruelty and prejudice will never outweigh dignity and truth. Ultimately, justice always finds a way because it is rooted in balance. Those who attempt to oppress or demean others often find themselves undone, not by external forces, but by the weight of their own actions. The bikers thought they were in control, but the very thing they ignored became the source of their downfall. Justice revealed itself through the retired police dog, through the elderly man's resilience, and through the crumbling arrogance of those who sought to harm them. The story reminds us that while hate may be loud, it is never lasting. Justice rises quietly, but powerfully, restoring balance in ways that leave lasting lessons for all who witness it.